Amidst the luxury of the resort and the bliss of his honeymoon, the millionaire believed he was living his new beginning, until, between the palm trees and the sound of the sea, he saw his ex-wife appear with two twins in her arms, and the world simply stopped. If you enjoy emotional dramas, subscribe to the channel and comment now where you're listening from. Continuing. The warm wind of Miami carried with it the salty scent of the Atlantic Ocean and a silence that Gabriel Mendoza hadn't experienced in decades. At 45, he had finally decided to pause, to stop running, to stop planning, to stop turning every breath into a business strategy. There, in the penthouse of the most exclusive resort in Florida, with a panoramic view of crystal-clear waters that faded into the horizon, Gabriel tried to believe that it was possible to love again. Camilla slept beside him, her brown hair spread across the white silk pillow. His new wife had a gift for bringing tranquility to the most turbulent moments of his mind. A successful businesswoman in the architecture field in New York City, she had appeared in his life like an unexpected breeze, after years immersed exclusively in the world of business. The wedding had been discreet, only close family, far from the spotlights that always followed the founder of Tech Vision, one of North America's most influential technology companies. Gabriel slowly got up, trying not to wake Camilla. His legs still carried the tension of someone who had spent 20 years sitting in meeting rooms, closing multi-million-dollar contracts, building an empire that now employed over 15,000 people in 7 countries. He walked to the balcony of the presidential suite, where breakfast awaited them. Chilled champagne, tropical fruits, fresh bread exuding an aroma that reminded him of his childhood bakery in Atlanta, Georgia, before the world became an endless race. He poured himself coffee and settled into the wicker armchair, watching the resort's morning activity. Families began to occupy the lounges around the infinity pool. Children ran through the perfectly manicured gardens, while their parents tried to balance relaxation and supervision. Gabriel smiled. He had never had time to observe such scenes. There was always a call to answer, an urgent email, a decision that couldn't wait. That's when he saw her. Time stopped. Literally. Gabriel felt as if the entire world had frozen around him, as if someone had pressed a universal pause button. A woman walked through the hotel gardens, holding the hands of 2 small boys. She wore a light blue dress that danced with the morning breeze, her black hair tied in an unpretentious bun. Her profile was unmistakable, even after 5 years. It was Letitia. Gabriel dropped the coffee cup, which shattered on the balcony floor. The noise brought him back to reality, but his eyes remained fixed on the woman who had been the great love and the greatest pain of his life. Letitia Carter, the woman who had disappeared from his life without explanation, leaving only a cold and definitive note. The woman he had searched for months, hiring private detectives, scouring social media, asking mutual friends. The woman who had become a ghost, a black hole in the center of his chest. But there she was, real, alive, and accompanied by 2 children who looked to be between 4 and 5 years old. Twins. Gabriel felt his legs weaken. The boys had wavy brown hair, exactly like his own in childhood. One of them laughed loudly, running towards the ducks swimming in the resort's artificial lake. The other, more timid, stayed close to his mother, observing everything with big, curious eyes, eyes that Gabriel recognized immediately. They were his own eyes. Memories flooded his mind like an avalanche. He remembered the nights they dreamed together about having children. Letitia always said she wanted twins, a boy and a girl, so they would never feel alone. Gabriel would laugh and say it didn't matter how many there were, as long as they had her smile and his determination. Now, observing those 2 children, Gabriel felt the overwhelming weight of a possibility he had never considered. Camilla approached from behind, still wearing her silk robe. "Honey, are you okay? I heard a noise." She noticed the porcelain shards on the floor and followed her husband's gaze towards the gardens. "Do you know that woman?" Gabriel couldn't answer immediately. His throat was dry, as if each word weighed a ton. It's someone from my past," he managed to murmur, without taking his eyes off Letitia and the children. Camilla noticed the tension in her husband's body. In 6 months of their relationship, she had never seen Gabriel so shaken, not even during the company's most complicated negotiations. "Gabriel, you need to sit down. You're pale." But Gabriel was already moving. Without thinking about the consequences, without calculating the risks, without making the strategic plans that had dominated every aspect of his life for 2 decades, he descended the suite stairs like a man in a trance, crossed the hotel's luxurious lobby, and headed towards the gardens. Camilla followed him, confused and worried. Letitia was crouching by the lake, helping one of the boys feed the ducks. She still had the same delicate way of moving, the same infinite patience that Gabriel had always admired. When she turned and saw him approaching, Gabriel witnessed a sequence of emotions crossing her face like a slow-motion film. First, total surprise, then recognition, followed by something that looked like panic. Gabriel. The name left her lips as a whisper, almost inaudible. Letitia. He stopped 2 meters away, as if there was an invisible barrier between them. I can't believe it's you. The 2 boys stopped playing and looked at the tall man who had appeared. One of them, the more outgoing, smiled and waved. The other hid behind his mother's legs, observing Gabriel with curiosity mixed with shyness. "These are my children," Letitia said, her voice trembling slightly. "Michael and Arthur." Gabriel felt the world spin around him. Michael and Arthur, the names they had chosen together during a rainy afternoon in New York City 5 years earlier. They had been planning their future, drawing their dream house, imagining what it would be like to have a family. He remembered that conversation perfectly. Letitia had insisted on those names, saying they sounded strong and affectionate at the same time. "Michael and Arthur," Gabriel repeated, his voice almost fading. How are they?" "They're 4 years old," Letitia completed, anticipating the question he couldn't formulate. "Born on March 15th. Gabriel did the math quickly. 5 years since their separation, 4 years for the children. It was possible. It was more than possible. It was obvious. Camilla approached at that moment, still wearing her robe over her bikini. Letitia observed her carefully, noticing the wedding ring shining on her left hand, the same ring Gabriel had taken off his finger 5 years ago when she left. "Camilla, this is Letitia," Gabriel said, his voice sounding strange even to himself. "Letitia, my wife." "Camilla." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the children seemed to sense the tension in the air. Michael, the more uninhibited one, broke the awkward moment. "Mommy, who's that man?" "He's tall like John's dad at school." The innocence of the question hit Gabriel like a punch to the stomach. Dad, that word he had never heard directed at him, that word he perhaps should have heard 4 years ago. Letitia knelt down to her children's height. "Boys, this is Gabriel. He's an old friend of Mommy's." She looked directly into Gabriel's eyes as she spoke. "Very old." Camilla watched the scene with growing comprehension. The tension between Gabriel and Letitia was palpable, laden with unresolved history, and there was something in the features of those children that gave her a chill in her stomach, especially in their eyes, those intense brown eyes she knew so well that she woke up seeing every morning for 6 months. "Gabriel," Camilla said, gently touching her husband's arm, "maybe we should go back to the room, let them enjoy their outing." But Gabriel didn't move. He was mesmerized, observing every detail of the boys, the way Michael held his mother's hand, how Arthur nervously played with the hem of his own shirt, how both of them had exactly the same dimple in their chin that he saw in the mirror every day. The resort lobby bar was almost empty at 10 o'clock at night. Gabriel had arrived 15 minutes earlier, ordering a whiskey that remained untouched on the dark wooden table. His hands trembled slightly, a sensation he hadn't experienced since the company's early years, when every decision could mean the success or bankruptcy of everything he had built. But this was different. This was about his life, about a past he thought he had buried forever. Camilla had stayed in the room. The conversation between them, after the encounter in the gardens, had been tense and painful. She wasn't naive. She immediately perceived the deep connection between Gabriel and Letitia, and especially the undeniable resemblance between her husband and those 2 children. "I understand you need to talk," she had said, with a maturity that cut Gabriel's heart, "but know that no matter what you discover tonight, our honeymoon ends here." Letitia appeared punctually at 10, wearing a simple white blouse and jeans. Without makeup, her hair down, she looked younger, closer to the woman Gabriel had loved intensely 5 years earlier. She sat in the opposite chair, ordered an orange juice, and remained silent for long seconds, as if organizing 2 decades of thoughts into a few words. "They are your children," she finally said, without preamble. "Michael and Arthur are your children, Gabriel." Even expecting this confirmation, hearing the words aloud was like receiving an electric shock. Gabriel closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to control the storm of emotions exploding in his chest. Anger, joy, sadness, regret, love, all mixed in a whirlwind that threatened to destroy him. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice coming out harsher than he intended. "Why did you hide this from me for 5 years? Letitia smiled bitterly. "Do you really want to know? Or do you prefer the version that won't hurt your pride?" "I want the truth, all of it. The truth is that when I discovered I was pregnant, 2 weeks after our separation, I thought about telling you immediately. I thought about coming back, about trying one more time. But then I remembered your words in our last fight. You said you never wanted a traditional family, that children would be an obstacle to your plans, that I was being naive to dream of a domestic life while you built an empire." Gabriel felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. He vaguely remembered that argument, but at the time he was so consumed by company stress, by a major acquisition he was negotiating, that he had said terrible things, things he didn't really mean. "But there was something else," Letitia continued, "something that made me sure you didn't deserve to know about the boys." "What do you mean?" Letitia took her phone from her bag and showed him some old photos. "Roderick Saunders, your partner, came to see me 3 days after our separation. He said he was my friend, that he was worried about me. He showed me this." The photos showed Gabriel entering a hotel with a brunette woman. They looked intimate. She was laughing at something he had said. His hands were on her waist. Gabriel immediately recognized the images. It was Marianne, a former Tech Vision employee, but the photos were out of context. They had met to discuss a job proposal for her new company. Gabriel remembered that day perfectly, because he had called Letitia right after Pew, telling her about the meeting. "Roderick said you had been having an affair for months. He showed me WhatsApp conversations, intimate emails, voice messages. Everything seemed real, Gabriel. Everything seemed true." Gabriel felt a cold anger rise up his spine. "Letitia, I never cheated on you. Never. That meeting with Marianne was professional. I even told you about it at the time. And those conversations—" "I know," she interrupted, surprising him. "I found out 6 months ago that it was all a lie." "What do you mean?" "Marianne sought me out. She heard through mutual friends that I had disappeared shortly after our separation. She got curious, investigated, and discovered that Roderick had manipulated everything. The messages were fake, edited. The photos were taken out of context. He wanted to separate us." Gabriel felt his world collapse around him. Roderick Saunders, his right-hand man, the man he had trusted with the company's expansion into other countries, the man who had consoled Gabriel during the most difficult months after Letitia's disappearance, the man who had practically become a brother. But why? Why would he do that? "Power," Letitia said simply. "With you emotionally destroyed and focused only on work, he managed to take operational control of Tech Vision. Today he owns 40% of the company, doesn't he? When you met him, he had nothing." Gabriel confirmed with a nod. During the 5 years that followed Letitia's departure, he had completely devoted himself to work. He had given Roderick carte blanche, signed documents without reading, transferred responsibilities without questioning. The pain of loss had made him vulnerable, and Roderick had taken advantage of it in a calculating and cruel way. "I should have looked for you when I discovered the truth," Letitia continued. "But the boys were already growing up. We had moved to Canada. They were adjusted. They spoke English, they had friends, and I had learned to live without you. I had become strong, independent. I no longer wanted to be the woman who waited for her husband to come home late from the office." "Then why are you here? Why Miami?" Letitia smiled, and for the first time since they reunited, the smile seemed genuine. "Michael has respiratory problems. The doctors recommended a drier climate during school holidays. Miami was a coincidence, or perhaps fate decided it was time for us to face the past." They remained silent for several minutes. Gabriel processed everything he had heard, trying to organize 5 years of pain and misunderstandings. Finally, he found the courage to ask the question he feared most. And now? What happens now? I don't know, Letitia answered honestly. You're married. You have a new life. And I've learned to live without needing anyone. The boys have a stable routine. They're happy. But they have the right to know their father. They do. And you have the right to know them. But Gabriel, if you enter their lives, it has to be to stay. I can't allow them to get attached to you and then be abandoned because your company needed more attention or because your new wife didn't accept the situation. Gabriel thought of Camilla, probably packing her bags at that very moment. He thought of Tech Vision, of the meeting with Japanese investors scheduled for next week. He thought of the life he had built, the public image he maintained, the responsibilities he carried. And then he looked at Letitia, really looked, and saw in her eyes the same determination that had attracted him from day one. But now that determination was accompanied by a wisdom that only comes with suffering and overcoming. I want to know them, Gabriel said. I want to be the father they deserve. I want to try to make up for 5 years of absence. And your company, your new life. Gabriel thought for a moment. Roderick wants Tech Vision. He can have it. I built it once. I can build again. But my children, they are unique. This chance is unique. In the months that followed his return to the United States, Gabriel faced the most difficult restructuring of his life. Camilla, as he had predicted, filed for divorce amicably, but firmly. I married you, she said, not the ghost of an unresolved love and 2 children you just discovered you have. The confrontation with Roderick was epic. Gabriel uncovered evidence of several financial irregularities and contractual manipulations. Instead of prosecuting his former partner, he offered him an ultimatum. He would buy his share of the company for a value well below market, or he would report all frauds to the competent authorities. Roderick accepted the agreement and disappeared from the American business landscape. Gabriel sold Tech Vision to an American conglomerate for a sum that would guarantee his financial independence for several lifetimes. With part of the money, he created the New Beginnings Foundation, focused on music and art projects for children in socially vulnerable situations. He invited Letitia to direct the foundation's musical projects. She accepted but imposed clear conditions. A professional relationship first, building trust as the boys, parents, and only then, perhaps, a personal rapprochement. Michael and Arthur, initially wary of the constant presence of this tall man who always appeared with gifts and interesting stories, gradually opened up. Gabriel learned that Michael loved soccer and mathematics, while Arthur was passionate about music and drawing. He learned that they were afraid of storms, that they loved pepperoni pizza, that Michael talked in his sleep, and Arthur always woke up in a good mood. He learned, above all, that being a father was much more difficult and much more rewarding than any business deal he had ever closed in his life. A year after their reunion in Miami, Gabriel proposed a family trip to the same resort where everything had begun, not as a desperate romantic attempt, but as a celebration of what they had built together. The 4 of them settled into a family suite, and for the first time in decades, Gabriel experienced a sense of completeness. On the last night of the trip, while the boys slept, Gabriel and Letitia walked along the beach under the starry sky of Miami. They talked about plans for the foundation, about the musical performances Arthur would do at school, about Michael's soccer championship. Thank you, Gabriel said, stopping and looking directly into Letitia's eyes. For what? For being strong enough to raise them alone, for giving me a second chance, for teaching me that true love isn't about possessing, it's about choosing to be present every day. Letitia smiled, and Gabriel recognized in that smile the same woman he had loved 5 years earlier, but transformed, strengthened, even more beautiful. And you. Thank you for finally learning that life isn't a company to be managed. It's an experience to be lived. They didn't kiss that night. They didn't make dramatic promises of eternal love, but they walked hand in hand back to the resort. Knowing they had found something more valuable than passion, they had found a true partnership, built on respect, honesty, and unconditional love for 2 boys who carried the best of each of them. 6 months later, Gabriel and Letitia remarried in a simple ceremony on the beach in Malibu, California, with Michael and Arthur as best men. It was not a return to the past, but the beginning of a completely new story. A story where success was not measured in annual revenue, but in children's laughter. Where the best investment did not yield financial dividends, but hugs at the end of the day. Where true wealth was not in banks, but in moments shared around the dinner table. Listening to Arthur play the piano while Michael did his homework, Gabriel had discovered that building an empire was easy compared to building a family, but he had also discovered that the latter was infinitely more rewarding than the former. The end of the story, dear listeners. We hope that the journey of Gabriel, Letitia, Michael, and Arthur has deeply touched your hearts. If this story of new beginnings and second chances has awakened emotions in you, don't forget to like, subscribe to our channel, and share in the comments which moment most marked your lives. Every day we bring intense narratives like this, which reveal the most intimate secrets of the human soul, the pains that transform us, and the loves that save us. Follow our next episodes, because we believe that every story told is a life reconnecting with its own essence. Until the next emotional journey we share together. Letitia, Gabriel said, finally finding his voice, we need to talk. She looked around, consciously realizing they were starting to attract the attention of other guests. Not here, not now. Then when? Where? The urgency in Gabriel's voice was uncontrollable. You disappeared for 5 years. 5 years, Letitia. And now you show up here, with them. Mommy, can we go see the flamingos? Arthur interrupted, tugging at his mother's dress. Letitia took a deep breath. Children, go play by the fountain. Don't go out of my sight. The boys obeyed, running towards the area she had indicated. Tonight, she said, looking alternately at Gabriel and Camilla, after they fall asleep, in the lobby bar at 10 o'clock. She paused, her eyes welling up. But Gabriel, you need to understand. A lot has changed. A lot that you don't know. And without another word, Letitia called her sons and walked away towards the other side of the garden, leaving Gabriel and Camilla standing under the scorching Miami sun, surrounded by questions neither of them knew how to answer.